What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're all doing well. And today, I'm very happy to be talking about the third and latest season coming to Jurassic World, Chaos Theory, which I am a little bit late to, I won't lie. I love talking about these shows, and if you guys are just jumping on the bandwagon here, I've already covered Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory's previous seasons here on the channel, and if you're unfamiliar with what those are, Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, and Chaos Theory are animated series that come from DreamWorks Animation that have been premiering on Netflix over the course of the last few years, and the events of this show takes place alongside the Jurassic World films as we follow a group of young kids who were stranded on Jurassic World during the events of the first film in the first season, Camp Cretaceous. And now with Chaos Theory, it's a sequel series where we're following these characters at more of a college age in their lives, and we're closer tied to the events of Jurassic World Dominion. So when I saw that this season was going to be a little bit more integrated into Jurassic World Dominion, I was pretty excited to check that out, because one thing that's interesting about these Jurassic Park and Jurassic World shows is the fact that they've been able to kind of honor the legacy in a lot of ways. And if you saw my reviews for the previous seasons, you'll know that I honestly thought that the Jurassic World and Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory series have honestly been, I think, in my general opinion, a better story than what was done in the Jurassic World live action films, even though I enjoy those films on their own level, specifically the first one. And so, yeah, going into this next season, I was really excited. One thing that you always kind of have to keep in mind as a 32-year-old guy watching a show like this is the fact that it's definitely made for kids. It's definitely made for a younger audience. So you do have to give the show a little bit of grace when it comes down to some of the silliness and some of the goofiness in the dialogue and certain animation choices. But with that said, one thing I've really enjoyed about it is that it doesn't necessarily stray away from darker elements or scarier elements. I think as a kid, I would have loved this as a longtime fan of the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise. And so diving into this show season after season has just been so much fun. So with all that said, if you guys are a fan of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, or specifically these animated shows, Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory, then you're in the right place, and I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing. But if you're a returning viewer, well, thanks so much for watching. And so yeah, getting into this season, I was pretty excited, and like usual, I like to talk about what happened or what's the base setup of a season. So if you haven't seen what's come before, it's kind of hard to talk about it without spoiling something that came before, so that is your warning. But I am not going to get into full-on spoilers for this season in case you haven't seen it yet but you are a fan of the show. At the very end of the second season, our Nublar 6, or specifically our Nublar 5, end up learning that the one that they thought passed away, Brooklyn, was actually alive. That's something that the audience knew, but it was something that was not known to our main characters until the very end of season 2. And so here we are now with season 3. Starting off, they all know that she's alive, and of course she set off with the character played by Dishan Lockman, which is Soyona Santos, which I mentioned before was a character from Jurassic World Dominion, who in a lot of ways was a throwaway villain character, but I really think that Chaos Theory has done a lot to make her a far more interesting character in the mix as we see her work alongside Brooklyn over the course of this season, and I found her to be a more interesting character in the last season. And overall, one really big positive about this season, probably my favorite part, is the way it directly connects to the events of Jurassic World Dominion, with a huge portion of this show taking place in Malta, just like it did in Jurassic World Dominion, with the story that's taking place in this show happening right alongside it. And there are moments that you can actually see some videos of online already where people have taken the clips from the live action movies and the clips from this show and put them alongside each other, where the characters are just behind a wall sometimes, and there are certain sequences that are happening at the same time. It never fully, coincides or, brings these characters together with our main leads from the Jurassic World films, as that would be a little bit difficult to do since this was obviously an afterthought. But I do think for the most part, this show does a really clever and fun thing when it comes down to the way it tells its story, the way it ties itself into the Jurassic World storyline without ever making it feel overly convoluted or messy. And so it was nice to see the character of Soyona Santos have a bigger role here. Again, I think Dishan Lockman has really been given a great opportunity to expand upon her character in a really fun and interesting way. Again, a character that in a lot of ways was just a throwaway bad guy in Dominion, and has now with these last 2 seasons become, I think, a pretty standout Jurassic World human villain. There aren't an abundance of those, and a lot of times I would say that the human villain in any Jurassic Park or Jurassic World film is usually just kind of throwaway. They're just there to kind of be an obstacle. But I think Santos was given a bigger role in both of these seasons to actually kind of be a standout. I honestly really appreciate them expanding this character and giving you a lot more context as to, what her role is in everything that was going on in Malta with the underground black market of dinosaurs and all that. I feel like it really, honestly, in a lot of ways, almost expands my care for the events that we're seeing in the Dominion as well. And this show also ties into the giant locusts that are in Dominion, something that I think most people were kind of like, this is a stupid element to have had in the final Jurassic World film at the time, even though we know we have a new one on the way. And so I think that this show also did some cool things to kind of expand a little bit about the locust, or at least showcase them in a way where you can understand a little bit more of what's going on behind the scenes. And there are a couple other characters that appear from Dominion that are in the live action movie that are in this show. So I thought that was really cool. I think for the most part, these series have done a really great job of being able to connect the shows to the movies by having certain characters from the movies appear. And one that you see in the very first episode, I wouldn't even say this is a spoiler, is the character of Barry Sembene, who was played by Omar Sy in the films, but here is played by Evan Michael Lee. He is made to look like Omar Sy, but it was cool to see that character here as well, a character that in a lot of ways, again, it kind of became a throwaway character in the live action movies, but this series has given him the opportunity to be a little bit more of a fleshed out character, even if he isn't played by Omar Sy in the animated show the same way that he was in live action. I still like that they're able to kind of expand upon these characters, and I like that they've done their best to have the actor who portrayed them in live action also return to play them in this animated film or this animated show. And it's kind of a shame that a lot of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World fans aren't watching this. There are plenty who are, but I think for the most part, this seems to be something that's a little bit more niche for a younger audience and for Jurassic Park fans who have chosen to dive into it. And from the adults that I've spoken to who have watched this that are Jurassic Park and Jurassic World fans, most of them seem to really be enjoying it and finding it to be a fun ride. So this is a series overall between Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory that I hope more people start to dive into. Now, going into this season, I'll say that I was a little bit torn on parts of it because, as I already mentioned, I think the portion of this show that focuses on Malta and connects us to specifically the events of Jurassic World Dominion and how our characters are behind the scenes of all that with the black market and all that, I found it to be the coolest part of this show. I found it to be the most interesting part of the show. But one big part of the show as well is the discourse between our main Nublar characters as they're struggling with whether or not to go after Brooklyn after she leaves with Santos at the beginning of the season, because you have characters like Sammy and Kenji who feel hurt. They feel hurt by the fact that she didn't tell them that she was alive. They feel hurt that she doesn't necessarily feel like she needs them or wants their help. And so they wonder, do we even need her? Do we need to go after her? She seems fine. It seems like she wants nothing to do with us. And so if we're really family, why would she do that to us? On the flip side, Darius, Yaz, and Ben all want to kind of work together to go after Brooklyn because they feel like maybe she's trapped in this situation. And this creates discourse between the group of characters. And initially, where they end up finding themselves is in Italy before we go to Malta. And the Italy portion of this season, I found myself torn with. During this, we get to be properly introduced to the character of Gia, played by Beatrice Grano, who is the long-distance girlfriend of Ben Pincus. And I found this to be a cute element. It was nice to see him have this girlfriend. It does add a very goofy, silly, little romantic element to the show. But then we also get to meet her grandmother, her Nonna, which is played by Isabella Rossellini, who was just nominated at the Oscars for Conclave, which was kind of crazy to see her in this show. And so we spent a lot of time at these people's house, at Gia and Nonna's house, and them just kind of deciding what they're going to do, fighting amongst each other, and also dealing with Bumpy's egg. That is a huge part of this. Will it hatch? Will it not hatch? And so amidst all this, there's also some dinosaurs in Italy that they choose to help the people of Italy kind of fend off. But I was a little bit torn on the Italy part of this season. I found it to be a little bit samey over the course of time. And while I found the characters of Gia and Nonna to be endearing over the course of the episodes that we see them, I can't necessarily say I loved their inclusion. I found them to kind of be characters that just felt like filler material. They serve a purpose. They push our characters forward at certain points, specifically Gia. And there are some tender moments between Nonna and Kenji and some of the other characters in the group who are struggling with the betrayal they feel from Brooklyn. But ultimately, when I look back at the season and I look at the really awesome part of the show, which leans again into Malta, Jurassic World Dominion storytelling, connecting side by side with everything that's going on there, I found that to be without a doubt the most compelling stuff in the season, and I just couldn't help but every time we went back to Italy, just not caring nearly as much. I was waiting for our characters to leave Italy, and as soon as they do, and they leave Italy and all go to Malta to again tie themselves into the events of Jurassic World Dominion, that's where I found myself the most invested. And I don't even think it's really that situation of feeling like I wanted them to connect. It's not even about the fact that it connects to the events of Jurassic World Dominion. For me, it was more so that that's just a cooler setting. And Malta was a cool setting in Dominion itself. But the underground black market dinosaur world was one of my favorite parts of Dominion. It was something I wanted to see more of. I liked the notion that there are dinosaurs roaming the earth at the end of Fallen Kingdom. And I just never felt like Dominion ever did enough with it. You know, we have the giant locust storyline, which served its purpose, but the notion of dinosaurs roaming the earth I thought was easily the best part. And so then to see that there was humans that were taking advantage of it and selling these dinosaurs for specific weaponized reasons, or trying to, you know, just sell them as pets, dangerous pets, you know, for to scare people off or to be used for dangerous reasons, I thought was interesting. So I like that this show actually gave us more time in that black market world, getting to see some of how that works. And I feel like that was easily the most interesting stuff. So again, to go to the Italy stuff in this season, I found to be a little bit lackluster. Overall, outside of that, I found that the dialogue was a little hit or miss for me as well. Some of the humor wasn't as good for me in this season. There is a little grace I give to all of that, though, as I already mentioned, because this is a show that's far more for a younger audience, and I think as an older guy, you just kind of have to watch a show like this and understand who it's made for and why I don't fall into that bracket anymore. But as a longtime Jurassic Park and Jurassic World fan, I still do feel serviced watching this show in a lot of ways, and I do feel like it honors the legacy of the franchise by telling good stories here with endearing characters. Despite there being elements I didn't necessarily love about it, the animation is still pretty solid, specifically around the dinosaurs. And one element I definitely want to talk about before I wrap up this video is the character of the Handler, who is one of the creepiest and eeriest villains I think in the entirety of the Jurassic World franchise. I would argue that the Handler is maybe the coolest human villain out of anything in Jurassic Park, like without a doubt. And she has not said a word for majority of the show. She's literally just been a character all about presence, as she is the handler of these three Atrociraptors that she controls via whistle. She's just a creepy, eerie character who walks around like Michael Myers. And this season, I thought, did a lot with her that was really interesting, made her still a very eerie, creepy character, but also somebody with a little bit more vulnerability, as we see her struggling with the notion that her Atrociraptors are now on the black market for sale, these dinosaurs that she spent so much time raising. And so you have this very dark character who is kind of finding themselves in a very vulnerable state. And I thought it made the Handler a far more interesting character, without a doubt. I really enjoyed the character over the course of this show. I don't know that I necessarily love what they did with the character in the end, but I did really enjoy seeing more about the bond between her and her Atrociraptors. But I do wish that they did more with her character in the end, the very end with her character. I'm a little bit torn on the decision they made there narratively, but you know, I am still curious to see where we go moving forward with season 4 of Chaos Theory. With all that said, I just kind of wanted to sit here and ramble about the show. I found it to still be a good, fun time. I really enjoyed that Malta stuff, and it was nice to see characters from the movie get expanded upon more in this season. And it was nice to spend time with the new Bar 6 once again. I'm really a fan of Kenji and Ben, Darius, Yaz, Sammy, and Brooklyn. I find them to be really endearing characters that over the course of the last few years, from Camp Cretaceous, thinking this was a silly, goofy, for kids show, finding myself more and more in love with every season, finding myself more and more in love with these characters over time. And I'll be honest in saying that this third season is probably my least favorite in the Chaos Theory series itself, the sequel series. I found the first 2 seasons to be a little bit stronger, but ultimately I do think that the things that are really strong in this season are really strong. My interest in season 4 is still just as high as it is to get to the next season every single time. I'm still really invested in this storyline and these characters, and I'm honestly curious to see where they take it. How much more do they connect directly into Jurassic World Dominion, because it seems like based on where this season ended, they were going to be still tying in directly, more specifically with the finale of Jurassic World Dominion. So will the show continue on after next season? Will it be the final season, or will we find ourselves in a place where these characters characters are kind of connecting to the events of the upcoming Scarlett Johansson movie. Who knows? Overall, that's going to be my thoughts on Jurassic World Chaos Theory Season 3. I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts. So have you seen the season? Have you not seen the season? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. And I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.